Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Before I start, I would like to recognize my board. I actually have most of the board here. And CEO, Sean Francis, Robert Fullerton, board member, Mr. Keith Ortiz, board member, and Mark Tilak Singh, board member and director in charge of finance and admin. And I notice I have a bunch of other managers here with me, supporting me, so welcome. I'm glad. I just want you all to know that these people, we all say it, it can't be done any other way. It can't be done without people like them. So what I'm sharing here is really what we have accomplished. So just wanted to introduce them to you. Let me just get going. I'm sorry that you're not going to see my real PowerPoint because I did it on 2011 Office, and apparently the bank or the development corporation is not quite there yet. So you will have to go with a very basic, PowerPoint. Okay, I'm going to jump quickly through some history. I don't want to spend too much time there. I also don't want to spend too much time on the first 2 points that I'm going to be sharing as what I can consider key success drivers, because I want to get really into the third one, which is really important to me. So for starters, Mervyn Ferreira started the business. My dad was just $40,000 and a lot of money from the bank, which we were very glad for banks. And this was in a very small little place on Oxford Street between Charlotte and Henry Street. You can't imagine an Optical place there. And I still can't imagine, even though I've seen it. And within a year, we had to invite two partners into the business. One was Neil Massey and one was another company from South. And because we really needed some capital injection, and we moved to Frederick Street. So then in 1986, my dad retired, but before I go any further, my father is a people's person. Anyone who has met him would always say, well, your dad is a great man. Your dad is a nice man. I used to actually get frustrated with it because you're basically saying, you're not as nice as him. But this was always a situation. Everybody loved him, and that's the way he did business. People liked doing business with him. And his vision for service was always a very personalized thing. But in 1986, he retired, and I took over the role as managing director. 1987, and I'm just giving you all some key things. Obviously, you can't get into 38, 40 years of what went on. So I'm just going to give some key nuggets for a reason. We then expanded into optometry services because up until then, we were a dispensing company. And we realized we were dependent on prescriptions coming from ophthalmologists, and the ophthalmologists were getting older and retiring, and the tap was beginning to shut off. So we started expanding into optometry services as well. And I also have my head optometrist right there, and I'm very glad that Jillian is here. 1988, we regained 100% ownership. I will talk about that in a little while later on, but for now, I'll just mention that we were able to buy back the company. Understand, 1988, we were in the midst of a deep recession, and we were in the same challenges that everybody else had. We had a serious cash flow problem. And it meant borrowing to the absolute hilt at a time when your revenues are down, everything is falling, and you're trying to make two ends meet. But there's a reason why we bought it back, and I will get back to that. So it was an extremely high risk at the time for us. 1990 and beyond, basically, we opened those stores as you would see on the PowerPoint, Long Circular Mall, Colsort, Tobago, Shogunas, Gulf City, Twin City Mall, West Mall. And in the whole process of time, we had also closed 3, we expanded 3, and I don't need to get into all of that at this time, because that's what business is about. You don't always, things change. It's constant change. So just a quick view of the stores. I don't want to harbor on this too long, but those of you who may not have seen them all, but these are the 5 stores that we have. Am I missing something here? Oh. No, I went ahead too far. Something is missing. At present, I mentioned the fact that we have 5 stores and that 2 more opening within the next, I'd say, within the next 4 months in Sangre Grande and Arima. We also have 165 employees, and if you put this in perspective, there are over 80 optical stores in Trinidad and Tobago. We have competition going through our ears. We have 4 competitors just on the 1 block on Frederick Street. We have over a dozen on the whole street. So we have a lot of competition, and there are over 80 in the country, and we have a market share of 23%. So that's pretty good coming out of 5 stores. Okay. I'm going to discuss 3 key success drivers for us, what I think was key to our success. The first one was positioning. What happened to us is that we found ourselves in a situation where there was an explosion of competition in the early 90s. That's when everyone was just opening up. Within every 3 months, there was somebody opening up a store. And when you're not used to competition like that, and we weren't, we used to supply to everyone. And we were almost like a household name back then. Yes, you're complacent. Yes, your whole perspective of things are quite different to what they would be now. So back then, we were facing price wars. We were facing declining sales and trying to react to everything that happened. And obviously, the first place that would attack would be price wars. That would be the first attack would be price wars. So we found ourselves trying to react to everything. And then we had to say, wait a minute. We can't continue just trying to react. We need to define. We can't be trying to be all things to all people. I was supposed to bring my water bottle up here. And I need it because I'm kind of heavily medicated. And the medication is literally drying me out. Thank you very much. Yes. So we couldn't continue reacting and trying to be all things to all people. The thing was to define our market. Who actually is our market? And we determined that our target market, or at least the market that we intend to target, are people who appreciate quality first, both products and services. Usually, but not only, middle to upper income. And we decided we are going to target, that's where we want. We can't try to satisfy everyone. In doing that, the next thing we had to do was consider what do we need to do to get there? Our locations, our store design, the products we sell, the staff we have, the technology we're going to use, the quality of lab work. All of those things have to be at a certain standard. If any of them are missing, you cannot really maximize on trying to go for the middle to upper income. So this was something that changed, as Alison would say, it caused us to become very focused. And the last one is effective quality customer service. And we decided that the effective quality customer service was what we were going to focus on in a very big way. The thing about it is, we have always been sort of leaders in introducing new products, services into the industry. And you can introduce a new product, and all you actually get is the first mover advantage. You may have a few months on your competitor. You may have a year. That's wishful thinking, but you pretty much have a first mover advantage. And after that, products may differ in some regard, but it's not vastly different. So what are we going to do? How are we going to differentiate ourselves? And we decided we are going to get back to the basics of what was the DNA of Ferreira Optical when my father was running it, when it was exploding very quickly in the days when he started it. So we went back to we looked at his whole approach. But in trying to convince our staff, they found it was a challenge to get them to understand that this is what people want. If you ask optometrists, they would say the number one thing is the best equipment and the best services, professional services. If you ask the front staff people, they would say we want bigger stores. Everybody had a different perspective as to what really was the number one thing customers were looking for. We said, no, I think it's something different to that. Let's do a survey. We did a survey with the customers, did a survey with the staff. What the staff thought was number one was at the bottom of the customer's list. What the customer thought was number one was quite different. What they wanted was a personal connection. How you deal with me. So the whole thing, which is back to what my father was about. So the whole thing was to then identify those priorities and begin to into specific actions and that sort of stuff, and actually get into intense training. And when I say training, many people would say, you know, we trained our staff in this and we trained in that, and often what they're saying is we conducted training, but you do not see a constant or consistent change in behavior. Until you get a consistent change in behavior, you have not really trained. You have facilitated training, but you don't have them trained. So we then decided, how are we going to actually develop that whole system? So we developed a system of intense training and then very methodical monitoring and assessment, ongoing, involving peers, involving supervisors, involving mystery shoppers, a whole system that people are evaluating each other constantly. And when you get the good results, you reward well. And the thing with the results, you may have heard Sean Francis, our CEO, on the little clip, that the target is 90%. The standard we want is a 90% mark when you are assessed. You would say, but that's extremely high. But think about it. If you're going to try to get people to a pass mark of 60%, you're saying, I don't mind the other 40% of areas that you're not doing right. It's no big deal for me. It does make a difference because then the service becomes very inconsistent. So that is the standard. And if there is poor performance, then you get into the whole coaching and progressive discipline, and eventually maybe the person is not a good fit for Ferreira Optical. So this is how these are the things that we consider, the two most things that we consider to, when I say two first things, sorry, positioning and our service strategies, what I just described to you, basically what we are doing. The third area, which is the one I really want to focus on, is core values. Core values. Let me move on here. Oh, I talked it out and I didn't advance it. That's all right. Yeah. Core values. Often you hear people talk about core values, but very often they can't describe specifics. It sounds like a nice thing to talk about, but are there actual specifics? I have a dilemma. When I was asked to do this, I thought, are people really, do they really want to hear what I'm about to share? What I'm about to share is basically my approach, my life, my actual experiences, and at the risk of you saying I'm crazy, I'm some kind of religious fanatic, and you gotta really think, why would I want to come up here and have all of you think that I'm some kind of a weirdo? I don't want that. So I am now faced with the situation, do I tell you as it is, or do I give you nice business-sounding things? Well, I'm gonna tell you as it is. If you think about it, Trinidad has approximately probably over 1,000 churches. Every 2 blocks you go, you could find a church. You could step out here and there are churches all in town. We don't have a problem with that, we accept it. But when you try to bring the stuff that you get from there in a very real way into your business, that's like a taboo. That's, no, you don't do that. That doesn't belong there. You have this great dichotomy, this separation, like separation of church and state, religion and business, they don't mix. Well, I have a very different view. 26 years ago, now, remember again, I didn't ask to come and share this, okay? So you're gonna have to hear what, take it or leave it. 26 years ago, I had a very personal experience. And I came into a very personal relationship with God through Jesus Christ. And I'm a practical man. I'm a businessman. I have anything I'm going to believe in or do, I've got to see the application to it. I can't waste time on things that don't really have an actual tangible thing I can use or do. So my first thing is, okay, if I'm going to be spending most of my waking time at work, I got to be able to get into what I believe and apply it to my work. It's got to be able to be applicable. So I started to look. I was told about that Proverbs was the area for wisdom. And you know, if you give quotations here in one of these sort of meetings, and you give any kind of quotations, people like them. You know, Confucius said, President so-and-so said. Well, bear with me, you're going to hear Proverbs said, because those are the quotations that I'm going to give. All right? As I started to look, one of the first ones that I saw was this one. The blessing of the Lord makes one rich, and he adds no sorrow with it. That struck me, because I am not saying this is the only way to get rich. Or let's not talk about rich as, you know, getting filthy rich. I'm talking about succeeding. But when it said, but he adds no sorrow with it, that struck me. I want to succeed, and I don't want sorrow with it. And when we talk about sorrow, there are many people out there driving nice BMWs. They don't even realize what they're driving because they're too busy thinking of the bad deal they made a little while back, or they're thinking of the heart trouble they have, or the fact that the wife left them, or the children don't know them. There is a price sometimes, I believe, when we do things that doesn't involve God, because he's very much involved in business, I believe. So, all right, yeah, so I am looking for relevant ways to apply my faith. So I continue to look in there, and then I see another one. The righteous man walks in his integrity. His children are blessed after him. What struck me with that one is that if I did things right, if I did things God's way, I have the hope of sustained success. Because if I'm going to leave stuff for my children, I want to see sustained success. I want success today, and I want it 10 years from now. I remember being a finalist in the Entrepreneur of the Year program some time back. And there were, you know, big winners at the end. And I look back now, and some of those winners are not around. So you can have great success one day, and you could be gone the next. So my desire is to find out how to succeed and how to sustain it. So I started to look. At one time, I heard of a businessman who was studying Proverbs in his business. And I said, but that sounds, that sounds kind of radical. I was prepared to do it with Mark and some of my close top managers that I was with at the time. And he and I met the businessman up in the States, saw what he did, and decided, no, we got to come back and do this. So we went a step further, which you will think, again, quite radical. The first proverb says that they are written by King Solomon so that we will know what is just, what is right, and what is just, what is right, what is fair. So I said, you know what? Let's invite our management team to get into this, and let's see if there's stuff in there that can tell us how to run business. And so we invited the management team and told them, look, this is not about evangelizing anyone. This is about trying to do what is right, just, and fair. Let's see what we can find out of this, and let's do it in an open study. I have a bunch of managers here who will attest to the fact that we were doing this. So anything you hear, I have to be crazy to stand here and lie. So, where was I? Yeah, so we got together and started to look at these scriptures. And why was I looking at them? Because where are we going to find proper standards? Everyone has a different view. For me, I believe the Bible to be the Word of God. So I decided I'm going to go into that. We are going to go into that and try to find the standards. We started off with, sorry, let me backtrack a little bit here. We use the word integrity a lot, and many people, it just sounds nice and it sounds fuzzy. But when it gets down to really what it means, moral soundness. Everything we do has to be done the best possible way, the righteous way it should be done. And that's the reason for getting into the Proverbs, per se. So we decided, okay, we looked through the book and we saw in chapter 11, the very first one looked business-like. And this is what it said. Dishonest scales are an abomination to the Lord, but just weights are his delight. We'll talk about the next one in a while. I don't want to scare the bank yet. So when I looked at that, I asked myself, we asked ourselves, we were in a meeting with about 15 people. What is this saying? We don't use scales. We're not in the produce business. We are not selling potatoes and whatever. Dishonest scales are an abomination to the Lord. We said, no, what is the principle here? Deception is an abomination to the Lord. Do we deceive people in our marketing? Do we deceive people with the things we tell them a product is and it really is not? Or the promises we make and we really know that we are giving them X minus Y? That basically tells me deception is out. Now, when you are discussing this kind of stuff among other employees, you can't come with a marketing program after and people can see it's deceptive. Or even it's... Many times we looked at what we were doing and found it, and we had to come back and remove it and become very, very, very transparent. It was challenging us because everything you did now had to be widely exposed in front of everyone. And that became a very intense challenge. As we were going along, for example, we came up another one. Now, we weren't picking them as we want. We went one after the other. And every single day, we were being challenged how to do business. Now, remember I said to you that we bought back the company at a very tough time. And I was up to my neck in debt. When I saw this one, it jumped out at me. The borrower is a servant to the lender. At that time, I was a real servant to the lender. I was at the peak of borrowing. And we looked at that and said, you know what? This is a clear sign that we need to get out of debt now. We needed to borrow the money at the right time, and now we need to get out of debt because we are too heavily in debt. And we set out to get out of debt and went through some of the most extraordinary experiences, but eventually we got out of it within about 2 years. And at this stage right now, it just happens to be where we are. If I needed to buy a building right now, I very likely will take a mortgage. So I'm not saying debt is wrong. Personally, for me, I felt this was speaking to me that I needed to get out of debt. And we right now have a gearing of 0.17. I think, which is debt over equity. And so I'm just showing how, as we went along, we were finding things that was telling us exactly how to live life in the business realm. As I mentioned to you, it led to a lot of transparency, and the transparency led to a lot of trust within the management team and within the staff, because everyone saw that we were willing to be transparent about everything we did and how we did it. I think this is the backbone for why I was able to pick up my family and immigrate and leave my business in the hands of people to run it on a day-to-day, day-to-day. I've had people call and tell me, I've had it twice. I've had someone call me up and say they want to buy Ferreira Optical. One was an American who had tremendous resources and was very involved in the building of lens crafters and Walmart's chain of opticals. And he was persistent. He wanted to buy Ferreira Optical. But I look back, and I was so tempted. I can't tell you how tempted I was. But I looked at the individual. I looked at the core values that we have. And while that thing was extremely tempting, I just did not believe that that's the direction that this company needed to go. I didn't think my senior people would like it, and I didn't think that I've worked all those years to get Ferreira Optical to where it is with the core values that it has. I was certain that those core values would no longer remain. So, but then another caller calls me and tells me, well, you know you can't continue running this thing from far. There's no way that you can continue to get your vision to expand, to continue and be replicated unless you are there. There's no way. Well, it's been 5 years, and I think we're doing just fine. And I believe it comes from the level of trust that we have. Some of the things that we had faced are just beyond what other people would even, you wouldn't want to have to face sometimes because it was challenging. But it was good. One of the main reasons why we want to why we wanted to buy back the company is because of this other proverb that we came across. There's one who scatters yet increases more, and there's one who withholds more than is right, but it leads to poverty. I began to understand from the time I went through that experience that my business is not mine, that God has blessed me with the business, and I can't just take it and just prosper, and it's all about me and it's all about my family, and yes, paying people salaries and giving other people work. There was more to it. And Bo had mentioned that about giving back to the community. And I felt that I had to do my part, and what is it that God wants from me? Well, I personally felt that we wanted to give 10% of profit before tax towards charitable things. Let's just put it that way. Meaningful things. And why you're hearing about this today, and I'm not comfortable sharing this because this is something we have never shared with anyone. We have never done our giving as a PR thing. We have never done it. We have never done it all in the papers and whatever. I'm not saying PR is wrong, by all means. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is my motive was to give back. And we decided we were going to give 10% of profit before tax, regardless of whatever we faced, that we were going to support things through it and just keep it quiet. So eventually we established a foundation called Changing Hands, charitable foundation. Reason why a foundation, for one, it's not saying Ferreira Optical. And the second thing is we're hoping that anything that goes into there, we don't have to be paying tax unnecessarily. So just to show you This is Bridge of Hope, one of the organizations that is doing some tremendous work in Kernahan Village and in the east part of Trinidad. That is all built by another businessman friend of mine, Subish Ramjatan, that's an orphanage, and there's tremendous stuff happening. This is all, just giving you a little example of this, but let me just move on. Another organization called ITNAC, Is There Not a Cause? ITNAC, I work closely with ITNAC. What we do is we supply the funding for them to take people out of, imagine an entire family living in that. An entire family living in that little thing like a shed. Take them out of there and put them there. So we would build houses like that. Here you see another situation of before and after. And again, I'm just sharing this because I want to again, just reiterate what Board said, that I think this is a meaningful reason why we are in business, and I think we are accountable for what we do with that business, what we do with our authority, what we do with our influence. I think it is not just for us. It is a gifting, it is a calling like any other calling to the clergy or whatever it may be. This is ITNAC in Haiti, Youth with a Mission, where we have a situation in Trinidad where most of the crime is committed by youth. This organization is doing tremendous work with young people, and we have been one of their biggest supporters. I want to just wind down here by basically saying my experiences are just too many to share in this area. I would love to tell you all what we have experienced, because we went on studying this thing and just literally looking at it from a business perspective with people of all different religions. It didn't matter, because what they heard and what we heard for ourselves was a lot of truth that was extremely useful. There's no way I can share them all. I actually got the opportunity to do it a few years back, where I used to do it on a radio program, and the program was called God at Work. And I used to give one of these principles 3 times a week for 2 years. Now, if I didn't find that it was working for me, there's no way I would have had enough material and enough interest to carry this thing on for 2 years. It really does. I want to say to you all that God is not the big man upstairs. To me, he's my Father. And if I can't get him, his advice, and I can't get his direction, then all of this is airy-fairy stuff. And I am not an airy-fairy person. I am a practical person. I am a businessman. Any businessman will tell you, you have to be practical. What you do has got to be able to be applied. And I want to see results. If I'm not seeing results, it makes no sense to me. So I just want to close by saying, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. That tells me of sustained success. If I could find out what God means by good, what he wants from me in specifics, I know that I will be able to leave an inheritance to my children. Yes, you need the MBAs sometimes, and you need the business training, definitely. CEO has an MBA. Mark, the Director of Finance and Administration, MBA trained. But we don't do anything unless we pray, unless we get direction, and we are not prepared to just follow the rule book as it is written in just the business schools. So I want to thank you for this opportunity, and that pretty much is my little experience.